You look like a table lamp, Ricardo.
I look like a table lamp.
Yeah, with those headphones on. Do you need them? They're not very becoming, mate.
No. Well, I could do that one.
Yeah, nah.
Or the whole sort of just, like being really cool.
Yeah, nice. Nah, that doesn't work either.
Well, if I don't have the headphones on, I can't hear the sort of insightful comments that you both make.
Yeah, righto.
Let's have a look at Rivals. Right, let's get straight into it tonight. Victor Matfield and Sir John Kerwin. Was it a penalty?
I think for the first time the officials got something right. So I was very happy. I was very worried that they're going to change it. But I think well done to the officials. I think a good call under pressure in Australia. I thought they made the right decision.
Yeah, look, I'm pleased Victor went first because he's been to more rucks than me. I think one of the things that's important is to look at it in real time, and I've seen it 50 times in real time. When they slow it down, I think a couple of things. I don't think he got behind the ball, so I think he was offside anyway, coming in from an angle rather than coming in through the gate. And I thought it was instantaneous. I thought it was a hugely courageous decision. I think what it's sort of overshadowed for me was the Australians were outstanding, but really only for 65 minutes of the game. A 25-5 lead or 23-5 lead, there's absolutely no way you should lose a test from that. So the last 10 minutes of the first half and probably the last 10 minutes of the second half for me was the difference, not that ruck, I thought they were outstanding, but then 2 quick tries from the Lions. And you know what it's like, Victor, you go in at half-time. If the Lions go in at half-time 23-5 or whatever it was, the whole conversation's different, the whole vibe's different. Farrell said after the game he was going to say the same message, but I just thought, I looked up and all of a sudden, boom, test was, you think, oh, they're back into it, they're going to win.
Yeah, I just back to the incident. I think there's 2 things that you need to have a look at. Firstly, did he hit him on the head or on the neck? I don't think he did. It was nice on the top. And the second thing, you're not allowed to do a croc roll anymore. So I think he went straight. It was a very hard hit. That's what you want. That's what you teach your forwards to really get stuck in. You want guys to pop out like that. That's like the ultimate for any forward if you get it clean like that. So did very well. But I'm with JK as well. This game made me think a lot about our 2009 second test against the British Ice Lions at Loftus, where you win the first test, you feel like you over the other team and you pitch up at the game, just not mentally quite there. And I think that's what the Lions probably did. Yes, they were motivated, but they knew there was a third test, there's a back door. Somehow they just mentally not 100% there. And Australia had everything to play for. It was do or die for them. They came out, and of course, when you came out like that, it's always a bit difficult to get into the test match. But I think once the Lions just got through that 30 minutes phase, we could see who is the best team of the 2. And yeah, they came through, and well done to them. They were under pressure, they focused. And also, I think Australia, I didn't understand why they made some of the changes so early in that second half. A guy like Will Skelton was unbelievable for me. Just his physical presence in the game. I mean, even in that little fight they had, or push that they had, he was just towering over everyone. And that's what you want in a game. You want that forward to just be there. That's a presence. And I wouldn't have taken off that early.
I couldn't believe it either, Victor. What surprised me is this is one of the biggest games of recent history, playing the Lions for players. And I thought Valentini and Skelton made a huge difference. I would not have put them on the GPS. Like, I listened to the after-match press conference, and two things stood out to me. Like, just run them till they can't run anymore would be my theory. Because I always remember I played with a guy called Peter Fatialofa, who was like the worst trainer and the best player. But he would just go and go and go and keep going. So it's a once in a lifetime. I wouldn't have taken them off. Second thing is, what surprised me about the press conference was the Australians were talking like they are a second-tier nation developing, young players getting better. That is just bullshit. This is Australia. This is one of the best teams in the world. This is, two-time bloody World Cup champions. I just don't understand the dialogue at the moment, I think that the dialogue should be, is Super Rugby now preparing New Zealand and Australian teams for Test match rugby like the Six Nations in the Northern Hemisphere does? Would Australia be a lot better after playing the championship? But coming out and saying, oh, we're a young team, we're still learning our style of play, that is not acceptable from a top-tier nation as far as I'm concerned. And I think you've got to be really careful with that dialogue. For me, Australia are our cousins. I felt for Australia because I would have loved to see them win and go to the last game this week. So I was pretty gutted for them. But, I don't like listening to them saying we're a developing side. There's young guys in the test match arena. No, I wouldn't. Like, if it was South Africa, I'd say too bad. If it was New Zealand, would say too bad. Like, what are you talking about? We're top tier nations. So that really surprised me, the changes and the dialogue.
If you're one of the top nations, I just don't think you get the opportunity to say we're building. You build in Super Rugby, you build in your local competition. That's where you get youngsters the opportunity. When you're at a test match, you pick your 15 best players or your 23 best players. And then you must make sure your mix is right. You've got young players coming through. You've got a few older guys with a lot of experience. So that's all about, selection. There is people in Australia that's played close to 100 test matches that's available. So if they want to say, listen, we're not experienced enough, just go pick one of those guys then. So, unfortunately, I don't think you get that opportunity to say, listen, we're a top-tier nation, we're building at test match level, especially if you're playing the British Isles Lions. That's the biggest thing in 12 years in any of South Africa or New Zealand's rugby calendars. So you should be ready for it.
I think it's fair to say that if either New Zealand or South Africa had been in the situation that Australia was in, and that hadn't been a penalty against us, we'd probably be making the same noises. So, that's understandable. But what are the things that they can change? They can't change the way the referee rules every ruck, but what are the things that they can change to make sure that they win against the Lions?
You've got to close out the game in the first half. You've got to have a better kicking game in the last 10 minutes. Once they score that first try, you've got to try and work for a penalty, get another 3 points. That last 10 minutes for me was the costing of the test match. I agree with Victor, and I don't know what's happening with us because we tend to be agreeing too much, but I felt the Lions were pretty poor in their discipline. They were turning over ball. They were trying to create stuff out of nothing instead of building it. So, for me, Australia, I don't think we're used to that intensity. And I get back to Super Rugby again versus the Northern Hemisphere competitions. It seemed to me that, you think about the Lions and the defence and the pressure that they sort of took in the first half. And yet there was a passage of play just before the Lions played those two games, and it looked like Australia were out on their feet. Now, are they fit enough? Of course they're fit enough, but you cannot actually train intensity. You've got to live it. You've got to own it. You've got to play it. You've got to feel it. You've got to understand what it's like to go to the well. But it looks like they played with such intensity, but then they just ran out of juice in the last 10 minutes of the first half. And then I agree with changes. I think that Valentini not coming out after half time and Will Skelton getting taken off early really made a difference. The guys that came on actually performed okay, but it's not those big bodies. You know, Valentini and Skelton were making some real inroads, really bending their defensive line. And once you bend the defensive line, it changes the whole aspect from backs. You know, someone like Tom Liner can then have front foot ball, start having a bit more time to make his kicks and stuff like that. So that's where I think they lost it, around 80 minutes of intensity at Test match rugby. You know, you lose games in one moment. And I think Australia probably had 15 minutes of dropping their intensity.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting. We talk about experience, and they're sitting with a guy like James O'Connor. Yes, I know he hasn't been maybe that successful at Test match level, but I mean, going to the Crusaders, coming on for them, closing out games, isn't he a guy with experience that maybe should be on the bench? And if you need some experience to close out a game, he's the right guy, or even to open it up. I thought he was really good for the Crusaders whenever he came on in the last few minutes of games to win the games for them, especially if there's a vital kick, or just to close out the game. So, unfortunately, this is a game of inches. I mean, we saw in a World Cup 3 1-point victories, and you're the world champ. And that's about dealing with those pressure moments in a game. And most of the time, when you've got those pressure moments, you want guys with a little bit of experience, guys that will stay calm under pressure, being there, making the right decisions. And that's, again, I mean, Skelton, Valentini, those are big moment players. And you want them there for the last few minutes. And sometimes, yes, GPS can say something, but the presence on the field, just giving confidence to everyone around you, unfortunately, the GPS can't show that.
I wonder if they asked them, you know? I wonder if they said, well, you got another 10 minutes, or this pre-planned stuff, I think you've got to be very careful of in big moments like those, you know? So he didn't look completely exhausted when he came off to me. I don't know. What are they saying in Australia, Ricardo? You're in Sydney at the moment. Have they actually gone away from the ruck and started talking about how they can win the next test?
No, it's still mainly about the ruck. You know, that's probably got another 6 years to go, I'd say, the talk about the ruck here. Has anyone ever asked you during a test match whether is it time for you to come off? What would you say?
Well, I was a winger, mate, so we didn't really do anything that much besides look good. So you have to ask Victor. Plus, in my day, you weren't allowed to, when we started, you weren't allowed to make replacements, only replacements for injuries. That's how old I am. So,
yeah, I was very fortunate. So I think of my 127 tests, I probably played close to 110, 80 minutes. So, yeah, so normally when it was a tight game, and again, because I was part of the leader group, you want your leaders to be on the field. You want your guys calling the line out, guys making vital decisions in the game on the field in the last 10, 20 minutes, because that's when you can really win a game or even run away with a game. So, yeah, I never wanted to come off the field. Yes, there's times where you get buggered in a game, but 2-3 more minutes and you're back in it. So, and I definitely think not one of those two guys look that they needed to come off. I thought they can go more. So, yeah, it's a difficult thing. That was probably pre-planned. They haven't played the previous test. So it's very difficult. But, yeah, I'm a guy, you want your big moment players there at the end of the game.
Can you just explain, like for me, hard work and getting tired is getting an Uber to the studio here, and I was exhausted by the time I'd moved my chair around. But when you play a test match, surely you're exhausted a lot earlier than the 80th minute, and you just have to keep dragging yourself up and going, you know what, I just need to battle through this. Can you explain to our viewers, our listeners, what that feeling's like?
I think from a coaching point of view, Ricardo, what they would have been looking at Skelton is how quickly he's getting into the defensive line, whether he's starting to miss a couple of tackles, whether he's getting to rucks and being a guard dog instead of hitting them. So they'd probably be looking at some technical stuff. And then I'll let Victor answer the sort of player stuff, but that's what the coaches will be looking for. I should imagine. I didn't see that. I'd probably have to go and relook at the game again. I didn't see that from Will Skelton, so that's why I'm saying they might have been looking at GPS stats instead of actually some of the game stuff. But Joe Smith's a pretty experienced coach. I'm pretty sure we would have been looking at technical performance. What do you reckon, Victor?
Something that I've seen now, especially working with Japan, and nowadays it wasn't that technical as well, JK. We were still, the coach just needed to have a feeling about it. These days they're very hard on it. Coaches can see, at Japan we've got, let's say, a red and a gold for a player. Gold is when a player works over 20, 30 meters to get into position to do something, and a red is if they don't get up, let's say within 2 seconds, or they walk the first 3 steps, and that started to show. So these days they do have much more info that they can use when they make substitutions. But again, I've said it as well, there's certain players that when you put them in a bleep test, they can't, they fall out first, but put them in a test match and there's important rucks to hit or turnovers to make or tackles to make, they're in front, they just keep going. So, and yeah, I think you need to look at that. You can't just look at the stats. Sometimes as well, if a player goes through those few minutes that he's really tired, if you know the game, you can be a bit lazy but still be in the right place at the right time, so because you understand the game. So yes, the stats is important, but you also need to have a feel for the game and a feel for what's happening in the test match. What do you need on the park, especially for those last 20, 30 minutes.
Victor, how you played a lot of 80 minutes. How did you drag your sorry ass around where you were exhausted and you still had 10 minutes to go, and they were the most important 10 minutes of the game?
If you're really exhausted, it's always the prop that needs to go down for a little injury so that you can be all right. They can't go on without the props, especially if there's a scrum. So you just delay it a little bit. But yeah, I can't really remember being a test match where I was so tired that I didn't want to go on. That wasn't part of my game. I know a guy like Bucky's he was never scared of the opposition. He was just scared of when he was going to get tired. So you probably do get different players. I've been in games where, one game in 2010 in New Zealand where the intensity was just so high and the contact was just unbelievable, where you think, whoa, can I still do this? But yeah, fitness-wise, luckily I was never there that I felt I need to come off.
The only time, Ricardo, I really noticed it was actually my first test, and I got told during the week by some of the elders, Andy Hayden and Andy Dalton and those guys said, look, JK, the intensity will be amazing. There'll be times in the game when you are absolutely physically hurting and you just need to go to the well. And if you can't go to the well, you won't be here too long. And it was true. I remember just before half time, we were playing France and they were playing a pretty expansive game. And I'd never run so much in all my life. And I actually was leaning on my knees and my legs were trembling. And I remember like it was yesterday thinking, are you good enough? Now we will know. And I just had to get through it. But it was in the same breath, I got through it pretty quick. Something happened. And, I think if you concentrate on that stuff too much, you've got to take your mind away from the pain and away from the hurting and go, I need to do my next job. I need to chase the ball as hard as I can and stuff like that. And then the mind, I actually did quite a bit of work on it afterwards. And, they say that you've still got 80% of energy when your mind tells you it doesn't want to go anymore. So, I think it's really interesting. I think there's another thing that we're not talking about, and are we happy that our rules are such that some of the biggest games are being decided by a TMO, or the rules that we now have? Can we avoid that in any way? Do we need to look at the rule book and get rid of some? what are we doing? Are we happy that the third test might be decided by a referee or the law? Is that a good or bad thing? So, I walked away, and it was an amazing test match. Australia were bagged all week, including us bagging them. And they came out and, they performed for 65 minutes, and it was a great test match to watch. So half the crowd would have walked away absolutely gutted, and probably 3/4 looked like a lot of Lions members, but they walked away ecstatic. But it came down to a decision, and how do we change that? Was it the right decision? Yep, I think it was, but it's still a decision, a TMO. I mean, I didn't even notice. I don't know about you, Victor, but when I was watching, I didn't even notice. I don't like when a player does that soccer, and I think there was a bit of that in it, which I don't agree with. He was I'm not criticising the player if he genuinely was hurt. Normally, when you genuinely get hurt, you don't even think about throwing your arms in the air because they're too bloody sore. But I didn't like that action, and it seems to be coming into our game because of the law. And do we want that? A lot of the times our leaders, they're very quick to stand up and say, we're values and, we're going blah, blah, blah. But are we creating spaces for that stuff now? It concerns me a wee bit.
I want to maybe come back on the previous point about in games when you're that tired. I just think as a team as well, there's certain things in a game that gives you energy, gives you momentum in a game. And I think that is something that a team must know. When you've lost momentum in a game, what's our go-to? What do we do to get almost that momentum back? But also, once you get momentum, the whole team gets energy. I've seen a lot with actually the All Blacks and the Crusaders. If they lose it sometimes, they just go to a middle ruck and they start pick and go just to get something back in the game. With the Bulls, we had certain things. I mean, when you have to go out, you have to defend wide plays. You don't get off the line. You don't make the hits behind the advantage line. Then you get tired. Then you must say, listen, guys, we need momentum back in this game. What's our go-to? Where do we go to take control back of this game? And that's something that teams probably need to work on, is to say, listen, this is what we need. When we lose control of a game, when we lose momentum, what do we do to get back into the game and to get energy? Because if you're in the front foot, when things go well, no one thinks about being tired. That's when you're under pressure, when that intensity is coming onto you, that you feel tired. So, it's all about what you can do to, firstly, get the momentum back, and secondly, to get that energy back. So, that's very important in games.
So just to clarify, I think Valentini had an injury. I think that was one of the reasons why he's replaced. I think another point is that Joe Schmidt's done an amazing job to get Australia from where they were, say, at the World Cup to where they are now. And also, when you looked at that ruck, there was probably about 5 or 6 things that could have been penalised. And you're talking about the dive and, were they sealing off and all that stuff. But all the people that were calling for a penalty are probably the same people that are saying we need to speed the game up. There's too many penalties, so we can't have it both ways. But one of the things I want to clarify is that you guys both said that this will be 3-0 to the Lions. Do you still think that?
Just on that first, and I mean that's a reality, and that's something Jake has been talking about. If I go back to any ruck and I want to find a penalty, I promise you I'll be able to find a penalty, not to make it a try. So we must be very careful to go back to something the whole time and look, because if you look for something, the chances are 60% there's something you'll find to disallow a try. Will it be 3-0? I'm not sure. I still think the Lions, but I've been in the third test match as well, where you've won the test series, especially like that one. You celebrate till Tuesday. It's very difficult to pick you up for the last test match. So it will be interesting to see what Farrell will do. Will he still go with the same team, or will he say to a few of the other guys, listen, guys, here's your opportunity to get a big victory and a British Lions test match or will he go with the same team? Because I know the celebrations would have been big. There would have been partying whole Saturday, whole Sunday, and sometimes it's very difficult to pick yourself up after that for its third test.
Yeah, I mean, they've made history. I think I saw some media saying if this Lions team wants to be great and go into legendary status, then they have to win the third test. And I don't disagree with that, because I think everything that Victor said is so true. You know, you're partying, you've made history, your childhood dreams have come true, and, you know, you are relaxed for sure. So I think if Farrell would make some changes, I reckon. I think he would make some changes for that reason, for no other reason as that put a bullet up under a few boys and give them the opportunity to bring energy and to be part of something very special. That's a bloody hard decision for a coach, right? Because you normally have a tendency to stay loyal, which is part of the DNA of us as people. So, yeah, and I think just getting back to what Victor said, you know, I think the sealing off rule, when I talk about getting rid of some of the rules, and I don't know if Joel Judge came out and actually protected his referees or came on line, did he, Ricardo? I know that Nigel Owens, who I've got a lot of respect for, came out and went through it really clearly. I don't know if Joel Judge did. But I think sealing off, if you watch Northern Hemisphere versus Southern Hemisphere rugby and you know, sealing off in Northern Hemisphere is way more common than the Southern Hemisphere. So I don't know how you judge that rule. If you go back to every single ruck, I guarantee that what the Lions did, the Australian team did early in the first half, you know, sealed off or hit a guy on the shoulder. And this is part of the problem of our laws and how we interpret them. So for me, the problem is, you know, a referee needs to stay consistent. Like Victor said, there's 18 different decisions that a referee needs to make at every ruck. And while we're sitting there on the couch enjoying it and you're having another pie, Ricardo, you know, what happens is we sit there and we've got the slow motion. It's like the TMO, but the game is so fast and so physical that decision-making is sometimes just about impossible. You are just reacting. And I don't think we're taking that into our game. Like Bodie getting sent off for reaction for the accidental knock on. You know, we've got to look at some of this stuff and try and take it out of it. And we've got to join the hemispheres. So if you watch Northern Hemisphere rugby, the ruck is refereed differently. And I think that's part of the challenge of, you know, Northern and Southern Hemisphere teams playing. You need to adjust to the ref. And it was a Northern Hemisphere ref. So he's going to give away or let, you know, sealing off a lot more because that's what he's used to in the Northern Hemisphere.
That was awesome. But the question was, is it going to be 3-zip to the Lions? Like, I don't know if you heard that bit, but can you give me an answer?
Yes, it is. If Farrell changes his team. I agree with Victor. You know, if you pick someone like O'Connor, you got to play him. He's in the team as an older member. I agree with what he did with the Crusaders. He came on a couple of times. He kicked a pinch goal. So I would be having him on the bench to go on with the last 15 minutes. I think Liner's really improving. I think this test was way better than his first test. I think he's got a lot of courage. I think he's got a really good kicking game. Obviously, his goal kicking's really good. So what he'll be looking at and what his old man will be looking at, because I've played with his old man a lot, you know, in the last 10 minutes of the first half, as a first five, did he control the game as well as he should? And he might not have had the ball. He might not have had the occasion to. But as a young first five, those are the types of things you need to look at. But I would use Connor. I would use him for sure, and I'd bring him on and try and win the last test. But I think if Farrell has the courage to change a few players to create some excitement and some focus and stuff, I think they've just got too much firepower.
Okay, well, there's been a lot of the words, I agree with you, Victor, I agree with you, JK, this week. So I'm going to disagree, and I'm going to say Australia's going to win. And because I don't think the Lions are as good, I think under pressure, they showed that they've got some weaknesses, and I think Australia have got some mongrel in them this week that they're going to win the game. But let's look at the South Africans.
Can I just challenge you there?
Yeah,
they were absolutely unbelievable under pressure. You muppet.
the Lions.
They were 23-5 down, and they came back to 23-17 under pressure. That is pressure. The only thing they did do well is they actually did what they needed to do under pressure.
How many skill errors did they make?
Standing under pressure.
How many skill errors did they make in that test compared to the previous
That's mental, mate. That's mental.
No, that's being overconfident. Going into it, think it's going to be too easy. Things are just going to happen. But God, I can't believe it. I'm with JK on this. To come back in that test match, to come in that last minute, to score the try. I mean, everyone don't give the Australians a chance to win that test match. You're under the pump. In the last minute, you have to go through how many phases to score the try, and you do it. That's handling the pressure pretty well.
So you guys are so easy to rack up and get it. It's the only way to get a decent answer out of you. Can you tell me, Victor, what you think of the South African squad? There's some big omissions from that squad for the Rugby Championship.
Yeah, there's a few interesting decisions. The biggest one for me is probably Thomas du Toit. I thought Thomas du Toit was probably the best tight head prop in the Northern Hemisphere. In the club season, he hasn't given him an opportunity at tight head, only played him at loose head. So that's really interesting for me. And then the two guys that were there for the first World Cup, Mampimpi and Lukanya all of a sudden not there anymore. So we knew there's going to be a change of the guard. At loose forward as well, a few interesting guys that's left out, and some other guys getting an opportunity. But yeah, I think the squad looks good. I think we still got a lot of depth in that squad, but I still think there's one or two guys that probably will be changed throughout the year, even when we get to the end of the year as well.
What about Faf de Klerk? Was that a surprise?
He's actually been quite on the edge of the squad for the last 3-4 years. He didn't play a lot of rugby last year. So they probably had to decide between him and Kobus Reinach to be almost that experienced scrum half. And Kobus played well. I mean, Faf played brilliantly when he came on. He had a big impact. But I think with Kobus being there last year as well, coming back to South Africa to play in South Africa as well, he probably just got the nod ahead of Faf.
I mean, there's a really important point of difference. I mean, if the South Africans can leave someone like Faf out, whereas the All Blacks have lost Nigel Hotham through injury, and that's left us a big hole, JK.
Oh, has it?
Yeah.
I think you're talking about, well, what about our Blues man?
Finlay Christie.
Totally. Finlay Christie's been our second and our first choice up until Razor got in touch or got the game. So I think that you just pick him straight away and you are covered for your third. So I think Hotham's a really good young player and you know, he's injured, which is a shame. But I think Finlay Christie can come in as third halfback and we don't lose anything. He'll have a point to prove. Apparently, he might have signed overseas, but I think in this case, if Hotham's out, what's he out? High ankle strain or something, out for a while, then you just pick him for the rest of the season. Away you go. So I'm not too concerned about that. I think, I think some of the other injuries, I hope, obviously they said Barrett's on the mend. I think, for me up front, we've got old mate injured, the prop. What's his name?
Lomax.
Yeah, Lomax. I should have known that. So that's a bit more of a concern for me than third halfback. So I think Lomax, and if you're coming up against South Africa, as Victor has just said, if you can leave out some of those front rowers that are big, amazing props, then front row is going to be a massive. And dare I say this, Victor? Dare I say this, that the scrum against South Africa and the line out is going to be fundamental to our winning. So I think Lomax is a bigger loss.
Yeah, Lomax has been very good for the All Blacks, and actually the All Blacks is the one team we didn't really get the upper hand in the scrums. will be interesting to see with Will Colo coming in there now. He's been really good for the Bulls, very strong as well. But we've seen it. These days, they don't use a scrum as a starting point anymore to play from. Almost every scrum, they first try and get a penalty, and after that, you play away. So, the set piece will be very important. And then last year, our lineout was actually a little bit under pressure from the All Blacks as well. We've got Lua de Jager back. Ruan Orkeo was man of the match. We've got Franco Mostert in that 5 position as well. So it will be interesting to see if Rassie is going there with the older guys or if he's giving the youngsters the opportunity to play in a big test match against All Blacks, all Australia.
It's funny how, we automatically feel that the Rugby Championship is to be decided between New Zealand and South Africa, but we're going to have an Australian team that's coming off the back of a pretty competitive Lions series and an Argentinian team that beat the Lions. So it's shaping up to be a hell of a series.
Oh, I think the team that's at biggest risk is South Africa, because they haven't had the games that they need to start the championship. So they've got Australia, and I think Australia have, regardless of the decision, the result this week, they'll be a better team for that. We've played a pretty good French side. I think, Victor, you should be worried because you might be a little bit underdone for your first test match.
Maybe you should be worried because you struggle to beat a French C team. But think whatever you want. I think the Boks will be prepared. I also think it's great that we start in South Africa. I think Australia is actually, we'll probably see, did they improve as much as we think in the Rugby Championship? Again, because you need to be consistent. You play 4 or 5 tough games in a row, and that's the same thing for Argentina. We know Argentina can beat any team on any day, but can they do it 3 or 4 weeks in a row? And that's the thing that you need to ask, and that's the same question that Australia will have to answer. So I think we're fortunate that we start in South Africa, build up a little bit of momentum, and then come over to New Zealand and break that long-standing record at Eden Park.
Ricardo, actually, I called you a Muppet before, but you actually do look like that girl that sits up in the
balcony.
In the balcony and heckles people. That a little bit like you. But I think to talk about your statement before and to sort of add to Victor's statement, I think that, if the Lions aren't that good, then we will see on Australia's results in the championship. They're either going to grow from this, and the Lions, were not the side that we think they are. I disagree with you. I think they're an unbelievable side. I think that they've got pressure players right across the park, but it's a massive championship for Aussie. Joe Smith's leaving. I agree. I think they've come on leaps and bounds, but I don't like them talking like they're a second-tier nation. They need to get that out of their dialogue, and they need some really big results in the championship. Otherwise, it's been, for me, it's a real concern. I love when Aussie is strong. I love when they win test matches. I don't like that they're doing one-offs, and New Zealand, we've been a little bit guilty of that in the last few years, and maybe it's because everyone's so much better. But I just think that if Australia cannot perform at the highest level, it really puts the whole Southern Hemisphere under pressure to understand what our competition is preparing our players for if Test match rugby is the ultimate. So that's my biggest worry. I'm really intrigued about the championship. I'm really intrigued to see where we are all against Victor's South Africa, because they are world champions. They have just won the under-20 World Cup, although they bored everyone to death with mauls and shit. But, they've got huge...
Did you see that back 3 of us? JK,
they don't give them the ball, Victor. They don't give them the ball, mate.
They scored all the tries, the wingers. Did you even watch?
They never give them
the
the ball,
scored
mate.
All the tries.
Bloody maul. But South Africa are the pinnacle. South Africa are the level. And last year, I think we let an opportunity go. In South Africa, I thought we had them on the ropes and couldn't quite finish them off. So this championship for me is a massive one around who's got the depth, how we're looking for the next World Cup.
Ricardo, just again, I think we haven't given enough credit probably to Australia and to Joe Schmidt. We said he's a great coach, and if someone can do something for Australian rugby, it would be him. So, the way they came back after that first test is just unbelievable. And they were really up for it. They were physically up for it. I think they were well prepared. But unfortunately, you need to be mental tough. And just for me at this stage, it feels like they're very happy with the game that they played. But like JK said, they were 23-5 up at home. At home, you can never lose that. And that's where they need to grow. If they want to beat South Africa, if they want to beat New Zealand consistently, you need to be mental tough. And you can't throw leads like that, especially at home, away to lose a test match.
Right. I think on that note, we've had so much agreement with you two. The good thing is that you can always disagree on who the best team is between South Africa and New Zealand. And you both don't like Australia, so appreciate that.
Thank you. And I can just send you the world rankings if you want to. So we don't have to argue. We know who's the number one. And I can send 2 World Cups with that.
You manage to mention the World Cup in every show we do.
Of course. Double world champions, sorry.
I cannot wait to win the next one.
What if we win the triple? Then we'll have to do 2 shows a week for me to mention it.
I don't even want to think about that, Victor. I do not even want to think about that, man. I was lying on the couch the other day, actually, Victor, thinking, this rivalry between New Zealand and South Africa, what South Africa has achieved, it is absolutely amazing. And what I love about it is that we need to take that mantle back. We need to do everything we can. We need to look at you, copy you, understand what's going on. I keep asking you about your development and all that sort of stuff. Your under-20s just won. So you must be immensely proud, but it really annoys me. So,
listen, are you cricket fans?
Yep.
Are you watching this Masters? Did you see AB de Villiers hitting 100 of 41 and then 100 of 38?
No, what's the Masters?
It's the seniors, like the legends.
Yeah.
They're playing it in the UK at the moment. AB de Villiers is just killing everyone. Smashing them all over.
I did see that we beat South Africa this week in the cricket.
Is it?
Yeah.
Zimbabwe. Hey, well done. You've won something. Okay, guys. I need to run. Thank you.
Cheers, mate.
See you later.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.